Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle Coleman. I am the CMO at Copy.ai, and I'm excited to talk to you today about the future of AI in sales. I feel like I have a slightly different take on things than other people do, so I guess we'll see how useful it is. So let me start with maybe some more of the philosophical elements of how to think about AI. And the philosophical elements are very different today than they were 12 months ago, 18 months ago, because a lot has changed. If I were having this conversation with you back then, I would have said something very different than I'm saying now. What I mean by that is a year ago, I would have been talking to you all about ChatGPT and how you need to be capable of writing really useful prompts and all the things that you need to do to interface with the large language model, the LLM, like ChatGPT or Google Bard, now called Gemini, or whatever it is. And so a year ago, we would have been talking about here's how to phrase a prompt, here's what to say and what not to say, here's how to chain different prompts together so you can make some useful outcome. The world is very different now. And I don't really think it's a good use of your time to become a prompt engineer and to really focus on what makes for a good or bad prompt and to spend a lot of time doing that kind of work inside of the chat GPTs of the world. And the reason for it is because there is purpose built solutions. There are purpose built solutions now for you that don't necessitate you to be a prompt engineer. That logic, that code, so to speak, it's natural language, but it really is, it's code-esque. It's like a new coding language that just happens to be natural language. Somebody else can do that. You don't have to. It's similar to like, you would never just, somebody wouldn't give you a spreadsheet and be like, go create a CRM. Like, that's not useful. Now, if a spreadsheet was all you had and you wanted to track your prospects and your accounts and your opportunities, like you could do it, but there's purpose-built CRMs for that. So go do that. Same thing for call recordings. You could use your voice memos app on your iPhone, but why would you when you can go and get one of the million call recorders that are out there that are purpose-built for you? It's same sort of evolution that we've seen over the last few months with AI capabilities, and we're going to talk about that. So that's point one. Point two, so now putting aside the prompt engineering and now focusing on, well, how do you get value out of these purpose-built solutions? And my answer to that is what you should be focusing on is codifying your process. And I mean you individually, if you're an individual seller, I mean you, if you're a manager, find the best practice, find the process on your team from somebody who's, in the trenches doing the work and codify that process. Like get that the step by step. How does this thing get done? Get it out of your head or out of your teammate's head and get it down on paper. So I'll walk through a very simple example here in a moment, and it's all about account research. And I'll talk about how we codified processes to create this account research plan that the workflow, I should say, that can go and be leveraged by anybody who wants to use it. And so, like, think about all the different tasks and all the different to-dos, all the different jobs to be done, whether you're an SDR or an AE or a manager or anything in between. Think about all those things that you do day to day and write them down. And this is something of a painstaking exercise for most companies, for most people. This is more of a fly by the seat of the pants thing. And, the best practices are communicated with tribal knowledge and with when somebody's onboarding, it's like, hey, go sit with Sally. She's the best cold caller we have and go learn from her. It's like, okay, that was good for then, but now let's think about getting them down on paper. And why is that important? Because once you have it written down and you have the step-by-step process of how we do things, then you can recreate that in a purpose-built AI software to go and make sure that you can multiply the impact of those processes across your entire team. And that really is the power of AI. So codifying these processes, what that will allow you to do for the first time, we've been talking about this for a long time, but it's never actually been possible, which is replicating your best performers. Replicating your best performers has been this pipe dream of managers and enablement people and the leadership since the dawn of time. It's really hard. And I say this as somebody who has trained thousands, literally, of SDRs, as well as ran enablement and was training AEs and CSMs and all the rest SEs. It's really, really difficult to replicate top performers because people are hard. Like, it's hard to get change management really done, but it's also hard to have person A behave like person B, even if They just got the master class on how to do it. And even if Sally sat with you for an hour and talked you through her cold calling process, it's really hard for you to go and replicate that because you're not her. And so there's always been this gap between what we want to happen, what we know should happen, what will make that person, our team, our company most performant, and what we can actually get done. And AI can't solve this. It can't entirely close the gap, but it can get you a heck of a lot closer than the more behavioral human change management process that was necessary prior to AI. So let's keep using this account research example. So step one, somebody on your team builds the best account plans at your company. Maybe that person is you. Congratulations. If you take the time to write down, how do I go about things? If I'm researching a private company, so they don't have a 10K, they don't have earnings calls, what am I doing to get information about that private company? Well, here are the steps that I take. I look for open job openings. And when I'm looking at those job openings, what am I looking for? Okay, that's part one. Part two, I'm looking for recent interviews with the C-suite. What has the CEO gone out and talked about recently? What can we learn from her? And how can we then connect the dots to our value prop? Let's look at recent funding announcement that maybe they've done, recent press releases that they've done. And then you can tie that all together. What's the language that I should be using that's going to make sure that when I'm reaching out to them, they know that I am a student of their business? And then finally, how do I actually create messaging that is not just about me and what I do or about my features, but about how my solution can help in service of their goals or to mitigate the challenges that I know exist because I just did all of this research. So that's one process. And one person on your team, I'm sure at least one, but let's just say there's one person who's the best at this. Like, have them step through line by line by line by line of what they do to actually build an account plan, have sample account plans from them. And again, this is the way that enablement and training has been done for a long time. But in the old world, what you would do is whoever that top person is, John, the best person at building an account plan, would get in front of the team for an hour, and he would present to the 50 AEs and SDRs in the room and say, here's my process, here's what I do. He'd give the step by step, and then maybe 10% of the people would actually do it, probably less actually. And there's good reasons why. Because it's hard. It's hard to do, and it's time consuming, and people have a million other things to do. And so, without exception, I found at most companies, the account research just falls through the cracks because it's not what managers care about. It's not what leadership cares about. It doesn't show up on a leaderboard, on a scoreboard anywhere. Account plans built is not a metric that anyone really ever looks at. And yet it's the foundation that makes for effective selling, not just SDRing, prospecting, opening the door, effective selling. You can't sell to a company. You can't sell to an executive unless you have a real point of view about what's happening at that account. So now, old world didn't really work. And you wonder why a smaller minority of people inside the company are successful sellers and hitting quota. It's because they're the ones that know how to do this and do this well, do it repeatedly, do it efficiently. Now, in the new world with AI, you take John's process, you can codify it in the software to go through those job openings, through the CEO interviews, press releases, funding announcements, all the rest. And then you can give that workflow to your team and say, all you need to do, person, SDR, AE, is input the company name that you're researching and our value prop and let the AI go do the work for you. And that's the difference. There's so much less change management because you don't have to actually train somebody on how to go and do the mind-numbing and sort of repetitive and mundane and frankly pretty boring task of trying to separate the wheat from the chaff and find signal from the noise and do all those things as you're searching the web for all those pieces of information. Instead, let the AI do that for you. And now you've replicated your top performer in a way that you never really have before. So this may sound something like science fiction. Maybe I'm making this sound more complicated than it is. I promise it's not. And let me show you some of these workflows that we have now. So this is Copy.ai. Copy.ai is a go-to-market AI platform. And what we mean by that is it is a platform that allows for out-of-the-box, purpose-built workflows. And I'll show you what a workflow is in a second for every member of the go-to-market team, for SDRs, AEs, CSMs, marketing folks, operations people, whatever it is. And you can see those functional sorts of categories across the top here in this workflow library. Each of these workflows is a series of steps effectively that you would execute. And let's just do this the private company research one. So each of these little actions that you see here in this chain is an individual prompt that we're sending to an LLM. And so you can see here in the old world, again, if we were having this conversation a year ago, we would have been talking about these words that you see here and how to architect these words and make an effective prompt to the, in ChatGPT or Bard or whatever it is. Now we're not talking about that. Now we're talking about the actual best practice and getting it from your subject matter experts and then leaning on a solution like ours to build these prompts or sets of prompts, chains of prompts for you. So you don't need to know how to write all this stuff. You shouldn't need to know how to write this stuff. What you should focus on is selling. Like, I don't want you spending time focusing on how to be a great prompt engineer. Maybe, a cool side project, but I would much rather you focus on being a seller and being thoughtful and strategic about what your sales strategy is. That's way more valuable. So each of these steps that you see here, getting the job openings, analyzing them. I mentioned researching the CEO, finding who they are, searching those interviews, scraping those interviews for all this information all the way down the line. And we keep going with the funding research and then what happened in the most recent round of funding. Let's look at their website. Let's find the language that they use. And again, each of these has pre-written prompts that you can adjust, but you don't have to write from scratch. And that is super useful. And then final report. Let's aggregate now all of this information that we just scraped from the live web. Let's put this together in one little output so that we have it all consolidated really nicely. And then let's connect my company's value prop to everything we just learned and exposed in this final report. And that's what this is doing for you. And so I mentioned, this whole thing about replicating your top performers. I built this. Well, that's probably going above and beyond. I built this with our prompt engineering team, with our product team internally, where I sat down with them and I said, when I'm researching private companies, here is what I do. And then they took my process, and I've been doing this for 10, 15 years now, and they created this workflow. And now this workflow, anybody can use it. When you come in and you can get a free trial of our product at app.copy.ai, you can use any of these workflows in the workflow library. They're here. They're for you. And that is a really powerful thing. One other really cool thing for any of you operations or any really leaders that are on this call is we're very cognizant of not creating yet another app that your team, your people need to log into and use. And so we have this concept that we call forms. And this is another reason, or maybe an important differentiation between our platform orientation and what you'll get from other more point solutions or tools, is that we want to be extensible and integrate into your flow of work. We don't want to force people to have to log in to yet another tool to get the value out of it. And so our platform allows you to take this workflow that you built, and not just this workflow, but any of the other workflows in the library or ones that you build yourself. Talk about that in a second. And you can I just copied and pasted that form. And now you can have this form anywhere. It could be in Slack, it could be in Salesforce, it could be wherever your team is actually working, so that they don't have to bounce around a million different things, but they meet them where they are. Or you could have this workflow, this research private company workflow, integrated directly into Salesforce. And every time a new account record gets created, you could trigger this workflow to run, and you could get all the really nice, rich detail that we just stepped through from this workflow, all pre-populated in your CRM, whether you use HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever it is. So let's actually look at the output here. I put in salesloft.com. I did this prior to starting the recording. It takes about a minute or so to run, which doesn't sound like a long time, but if I was sitting here just twiddling my thumbs for a minute, you guys would be like, what are you doing? So anyway, I ran this beforehand. Salesloft is the company that I did some research on, and then I just put in the value prop from our homepage. And here's what it did. So getting the job openings, here's some analysis of the job openings. And based on these open roles, here are growth and focus areas of the company. Here are potential problems they're trying to solve by the hires that they're bringing in. Pretty useful. Keep going down, same sort of thing. We're finding interviews with the CEO. We are scraping those interviews and analyzing them, isolating those factors. Where are growth and focus areas? Where are struggles and challenges? And that to me is what an account plan is. That to me is what having a point of view on a company really is these two things: growth bets, where are they placing bets for growth? Where are their likely struggles going to be? And then we keep going down. until the lingo map. So here's some useful words I need to know when I'm reaching out to SalesLoft. A lot of these words should look pretty familiar to you, assuming you have some familiarity with sales automation platforms. I assume you do. And then here's the final report. So taking everything above and summarizing it into this one report, I can copy this, paste it into a Google Doc. I can share with my AE, with my SDR. Again, I can integrate this directly into Salesforce and just write all this information back to the account record. Very useful. And then here's my favorite part, generate relevant angles. So this is where the AI is connecting the dots between all the research that was just done and your company's value prop that you inputted into the prompt, or I'm sorry, into the workflow. And here's what the AI thinks would be some useful angles to inform your messaging, your cold call scripts, your video messaging, whatever it may be. Here's how our go-to-market AI platform can help them with their sales and marketing, with their product development innovation, with CS, with their scalability challenges, with all of these things. Like, this is awesome, absolutely incredible stuff. And you get it, again, just in the snap of the fingers. Now, this is not to say that we're trying to remove the burden of thinking from the human. Far from it. What we're trying to do is shortcut the repetitive, mundane, menial stuff. Like, I don't want a seller spending an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is, to build this report. I've been there before. It's mind numbing. It's not fun. It's not energizing. However, it's very important that when you get this kind of output, you're really thoughtful about, what does this mean? How can this inform my strategy? Again, like I mentioned this before, but what I want you all to focus on is, you're going to be reclaiming a lot of time by using a solution like this. What are you going to do with that time? Two options. One, you can just do more stuff. You can play the quantity game, play the numbers game. That's what happened, sadly, with the rise of, ironically enough, the sales lofts and outreaches of the world, as we just got into this numbers game and kind of quality fell by the wayside. Please don't do that. What I'm hopeful that most people will do, or many teams will do, is with all the time they reclaim, they will use that to upskill, to focus on sales acumen, to build the skills that has been missing from many, many training regimens for SDRs and AEs. How can I do good discovery? How can I execute good demos? How can I actually multi-thread? What does good negotiation look and feel like? All of those things, the sales skills, that's what you can focus on when you reclaim all this time back. So, all right, that's my soapbox for how to use this time. So this is the private company, same thing for the public companies. So in here, we're looking at earnings calls or analyzing those calls. We're looking at 10Ks. And you could do a version of this. You could splice these together and say, hey, I want to look at open job openings for a public company too. Super easy to build your own workflow or augment this out of the box workflow with whatever steps you want. But I find this is actually really solid. So same sort of thing here. I did this for ServiceNow and put in my company's value prop. So ServiceNow's ticker symbol is NOW, same value prop you saw before from our website. And here's what the AI does. It goes through the earnings call. It analyzes that earnings call and finds the same sort of areas that we just talked about. Where are they placing bets for growth? Where are there likely struggles? And what's really cool about this is we get Bill McDermott. His name is here. So he's the chairman, CEO of ServiceNow. So, okay, cool. This matters to Bill McDermott. You bet your buns it matters to everybody else across that company. We have another one from another executive. So it has sources, and you can reference those people in your outreach to anybody at the company. And then we look at 10Ks as well. So earnings calls happen quarterly, 10Ks are annual. So you get hopefully there's overlap between the two, but you get slightly different flavors here. And here's what they're focused on: growth areas, focus areas, struggles, potential challenges, and then same sort of coup de grace step at the end here with, what is the value that our platform could potentially provide based on how we address those growth goals or support those growth goals, and how we can help mitigate some of the potential struggles that they have. So this, again, super easy. And now I can go work with my SDR, AE, SE, with my management team, whatever it is, and have a really strong point of view on what we need to say to whom to be as successful as possible. So that's an example. And again, this is the tip of the iceberg. There's way, way more that you can do here. And you can chain a lot of these workflows together in a really useful way. So for example, let's say I want to reach out to ServiceNow, but I also want to find the right people at ServiceNow. You can find the right people using this workflow here. And I'll just show you what it looks like real quick. So put in ServiceNow, say I want to reach out to the most senior revenue leaders, and give me the top 10. And then you run this workflow and it identifies who those people are. It's pretty cool. From there, you can have them write personalized cold emails. So this is yet another process that was codified with me and our internal product and prompt engineering team. They said, I sat with them for an hour and was like, here's my process for writing cold emails. And they took that and they created this workflow that now, again, you can use as, to your heart's content. And all you do is you put in who you're reaching out to, a little bit about them, their title, their company. And again, all this stuff is coming from these account plans that you did or lead enrichment workflows that you can run. So you can chain this all together. This could be completely automated if you want. And then you run the workflow and it writes an email like Kyle, which is, I think, pretty good. Reliably, this is coming up with emails that are scoring like low 90s in Lavender, just right out of the box. Are they perfect? No. There's a little bit of tweaking that needs to be done, but they're 95% of the way there. It's pretty solid. So very cool stuff. And this is what will allow you to go from this really bloated environment where you've got all these different tools and all these different processes and different people with different knowledge and all these handoffs and all the rest. Like, it's really hard to get stuff done in that environment. So you go from that bloated environment where it's hard to move, you feel like you're running through quicksand, to a really high velocity environment where you can get a lot just delivered to you on a silver platter. And then what you do with it, that's the big difference. And I'm really hopeful that, again, as I said before, and I know I'm a bit repetitive here, but I really want to hammer this point home, that when you reclaim all this time, there's crazy stats out there that you see that right now reps are spending like 28% of their time actually selling. And so with this, and what are they doing that in the other 72% of the time? It's a lot of this stuff, a lot of the research, a lot of the, the sitting in internal meetings, sitting in enablement and training meetings that aren't super helpful, all that sort of stuff. So let's just say we can move that from spending 30% of your time selling to spending 60% of your time selling. That's huge. And what that means is you're reclaiming time to sell. And in order to sell well, you need to be really sharp with all the other sales acumen skills, all the other things I already mentioned around cold calling skills and speaking to a human, speaking to executives, discovery, demos, all the things up and down the sales funnel that you really need to pay a lot of attention to. So is this a threat to SDRs? Yeah, it is, in a good way. I think it's a threat to the SDR role that's become hyper specialized and sadly has not set a lot of people up for success inside their company. There's such a huge gap that's been created between an SDR role and that AE role that so many people want to get into because they're not learning sales skills. They're forced to stay in this really narrow lane of prospecting. And now prospecting is a very important skill set and teaches you a ton. I'm very grateful for a lot of the prospecting experience that I have. But is it everything you need to know to go be an effective seller? No, it's not. And so I'm hopeful that with AI doing a lot of the work that was previously kind of siphoned off to an SDR, what now the new SDR role will be, the evolved SDR role will be, is more of a full cycle sales role. When you come in, you're going to have so much more time to learn the art of sales, to execute strategically at a really high level. And you're going to be able to close that gap that exists now between the traditional role of an SDR and the traditional role of an AE. And we're going to, sort of ironically, go back to where we were 20, 25 years ago, where inside sales, full cycle sales, that was entry level. That was the first gig you got when you're new to tech or fresh out of school or whatever it is. And that's the journey that I believe we're on. And the same thing is true for AEs. Like, you're going to have so much time back. What are you going to do with that time? Same thing for managers, for enablement people. You're going to be able to focus on the higher leverage things, the things that really provide a lot of lift to the individuals on your team, to your department, to your company. And that, to me, is the promise of a go-to-market AI platform. Reduce the bloat that exists across your company, achieve true velocity inside your company, and go and make sure that your people are pulling the levers that can move the world. And that's pretty cool. That's where we are. I hope that was helpful. There's a million other things I could show. I know that the account research stuff is kind of basic, but again, really important. And it's by no means the only workflow that we have out of the box. And we didn't even talk about the ease of building your own workflows. But let me actually, this is not a best practice, but jumping back into the demo here. If you don't see the workflow that you want to run in our workflow library here across these functions, you can go to this workflow builder UI and you can ask it, like, let's just do a simple one, given a link, March Madness is upon us. So given a LinkedIn URL, find a person's alma mater. Something like that. So now we're going to just input somebody's LinkedIn profile, and then the AI is going to go find where their alma mater is, see if that alma mater team is playing in the March Madness tournament, and then they're going to write the email that says, hey, if your team wins, then I owe you lunch. If your team loses, you owe me a meeting, something like that. And so what will happen here in 30 or so seconds is you'll get a workflow that will look like this, where the AI is identifying what steps do I need to run in what order in order to achieve that input that the user gave. I'm going to run out of time here, but normally this takes 30 or 60 seconds, but it's so much easier than going into ChatGPT and just hoping and praying that you can architect the right prompts to achieve some outcome that's then not reusable. So this is reusable for you, for your team, for your company, integratable into your systems, just makes leveraging AI so much easier, provides real business value. And that's the way you've got to think about things. So hopefully you're feeling good about what we can do for you and just the way to think. And this is done. So here's what it looks like. Scrape LinkedIn profile, extract the name, find the alma mater, write the email. So this is all done. And here's the prompts that are written. So anyway, this stuff is really cool to me. If you want to learn more, please feel free to visit. I don't know what side of the screen it's on, Copy.ai. And we're happy to hook you up. As I said, there's free trials, so you can go and test this out for yourself and see how cool it is. Thanks for the time. Enjoy the rest of the conference here and have a lovely rest of your day.